Hey up lads and lasses, Damfire here. So today I've got another tier list for you. We're going to do the ships today. This will mostly be revolving around arena and PvP, to the most important aspects of this game. I will mention if a ship is good for mining, but I have this NA tier list right here, and that's to let you guys know that it doesn't really matter too much for your PvP or anything when you get to sort of, I think, around level 65, and that's where you get 100 costs, and that's where you can run your carrier double battleship cruiser or your double carrier battleship cruiser setups. So obviously at that point destroyers and below are not particularly useful at any point, but we'll go through it anyway. Right, I don't own all of these ships, so I'm going off the shipbuilding to make it a little bit more even. I do know some of the ships because I do own some of them. I do test with some of them, and I know some people that have got them, and they've been telling me and testing with me and stuff like that. So without further to do, we're going to go jump into the Federal ships. We're going to start off with the Blast. So this is one of those ships that is going to hit in this NA bit because it's not going to be applicable for arena and PV, well, the higher end of PvP, Wolf Squad, etc. But I will note that this does have the mining bonus on it. So on the warship features, we've got fleet mining capacity, really good for that. If you are going to run it in PvE, I have seen people use it in PvE where they get the entire enemy fleet to just kite around. Well, kite the entire fleet round with this thing so they can't hit it, while the rest of your ships just keep dealing damage out. So it has got a niche use in PvE, but it's not for arena, so we'll ignore it for now. Next up, we have the Rainstorm. Again, as you're leveling up, this is a great little destroyer. It's easy to get. It's easy to get the reforms on. Torps are actually quite a good weapon system. It's a shame that none of the larger ships actually use torps. Otherwise, I could see them being one of the better weapon systems, because they do actually dish out quite a considerable amount of damage. So, a bit of a shame. So on here we've got must crit every 1.6 seconds, and torpedo durability increased by 180%, which is kind of useless to be honest, because no one uses anti-air, and that also shoots the torps, but it doesn't matter too much there at all. The speed increase though is very nice. Other than that, subsystem wise, you've got crit damage on torps, and the second subsystem is crit rate on torps. Nice little subsystems. You can quite easily get a few T3 torps on here and maybe run it in one of your smaller fleets for Legion Wars, and it'll do alright, but again, it's not going to be part of your main fleet, so it's an NA. Next up, we have the Tornado Cruiser. Now, this one we will have a chat about because I think it's... I personally think it's the best cruiser currently in the game. The reason being is because of the way the slots are set up on it. It has very good slots to be able to change from a complete DPS fit into a support fit. It's got the versatility, and it's got pretty good warship features. We go through those. It has the steel barriers, damage will not exceed 3.9%, really nice. We've got projectile weapon penetrates target with 40% probability, so if you're using Gorse on here, you get like massive amount of penetration, which will ignore shields or go through the armor and hit the ship behind. It can do a considerable bit of work. I personally use it. I have a support version of it. I've got a video link. I can put a link in the description below if you're interested in seeing a support version of it. Subsystems has got projectile rate, that's crit rate, and it's also got anti-aircraft weapon cooldown. Now the anti-aircraft weapon cooldown is completely useless on it, and including the warship feature, which is damage to UAVs, missiles and torpedoes, again, it's completely worthless on it, as far as I'm aware. Unless that gets patched at some point, just ignore anti-weapons for now. They just don't do enough damage to take out the UAVs to make you double guess running a carrier. So Not too good there. But projectile crit rate is really good. This can get quite a good subsystem on here where you've got crit rate, crit damage, and kinetic damage. I think is the best one I've seen so far. All like the trifecta of everything you want on it. As a cruiser, and you have to run one cruiser in the current meta, I think this is A tier. Personally, because it can dish out a lot of damage and it has a versatility to run support, making your other ships dish out more damage. Next up, we have the Fog. I can't get on with it. I just can't. So it's got steel barriers, which is nice, and it's got focus. Damage increased by 32% when there is no enemy unit within 400 yards, which is nice. And flank hard to break. Flank armor durability increased by 42%. So you take reduced damage when you're on an orbit of an enemy ship, which you pretty much always are with most ships, which is nice. The subsystems let it down. So they're thermal damage on missiles and missile maximum range. Missiles are crap. There is one missile system that I'll say is actually quite good, and that's the Pulse. But that fires more like the XNT lasers. It's just a straight line, rapid shot. It tracks a little bit, but it's not like every other missile. The thermal, the cruise. The cruisers aren't too bad. So yeah, I can't rate this ship too highly. The best builds of this ship I've seen have been laser boats, where they put deconstruction rays and XNT lasers on it. So making these subsystems completely worthless to it. So yeah, this is C tier, unfortunately. Next up, we have the Frost. Oh, just a quick one on the Fog. If you are going to run it and you're running missiles, I recommend Jim, because missiles have a long cooldown. So having Jim to increase the DPS by reducing cooldown every now and then and just firing all the missiles off is actually quite good. That's who I'd recommend on here. And for the Tornado, I'd recommend Rand or Dudden if you're running a support style fleet with a support cruiser. If you're running the damage type cruiser, I'd probably recommend either Vincent or, I mean, Blackbeard, Layla and stuff would be good, but you probably run them on other ships. Anyway, sorry, back to the Frost. So the Frost, I think, is a B tier carrier. It, again, like all the rest of the Federal ships, it has the steel barriers. Damage will not exceed 3.4%, which is nice. UAV durability improved by 80%, which is worthless because no one's shooting UAVs down, because no one runs anti-air, because you can't fit them on a ship, because you're trying to get as much DPS out or most of the time. And again, they just don't do enough damage anyway. And then you have buff duration of the device to allies increased by 70%. Subsystem wise, it's got tactical cooldown 7%. UAV crit rate 10%, and UAV kinetic energy damage 10%. I think this could actually be quite a good ship. You slap on global CN onto it, and then all of a sudden your global CN buff, which is loads of resistance, loads of crit rate, it's affecting all of your ships. It's got 70% increased duration on it. It's almost double the duration it has at the moment, which is actually really, really useful. The problem is, at that point then, you got this massive 7 slot, and it has got a good slot, so you can potentially get the rest of your UAVs on here to make up for the damage lack of damage this ship has. So I put it in B tier because I personally think it needs to be run as a support cruiser, otherwise you're not making use of that warship feature. And there's better carriers out there if you just want a pure damage carrier. So we're going to put it in B tier. Captain-wise, anything that'll give you better survivability on this, so it can keep the buffs going and try and keep that damage over time from the UAVs out. That's sort of how they work. You're probably looking at Surf is probably your best one, because this ship will probably get targeted last, because it'll have higher durability than most of your other ships. So people will try and take out the weakest ships first and move on, or the Monster or the Legion or your big DPS ships first. So this ship's pretty good with Surf, because there's a good chance that you'll get the damage buff off her. So yeah, so I recommend on her. Next up, we're going into the Pirates. I do love the pirate ships. They got some great looking things, and the Scorpion is a fantastic looking ship. Fortunately, it's NA, because again, it doesn't provide any bonuses to you at any point, really. By the time you can get hold of one of these, you're probably into cruisers already. So I just wouldn't recommend picking them up. Unless they add some kind of feature later on where you're forced to take, I don't know, a frigate, a destroyer, a cruiser, and a battleship, and that's the 4 slots you get, and that's all you can have. Which I would love to see, because it would make some of these little ships really viable. And then you go, oh, the Scorpion's nuts, and it would add some extra depth to the game. But yeah, again, it's not worth anything in the arena, so it's not particularly good. Like all the frigates, by the way, they're great with Killer Robbie on it, I think. That's probably who I'd put onto it. If not, I'd probably try and put Vincent on it, increase that dodge rate, because the frigate's dodge rates, like as a base stat, is quite high. And reforms on it to get the dodge rate up makes it even higher. Then with Vincent on it, they become pretty durable just because nothing can shoot them except lasers. And if a laser comes along and shoots you, it's got the lock-on ability. It's always going to hit. And that's going to suck, but if everyone's running projectiles, you're just going to run around them in circles, no issue. So it has attack battleship stern and flanks for 36% additional damage. When the moving speed is greater than 40, the dodge rate increases by 42%. So that's 42%. If you put Vincent on there, and you can keep them greater than 40 quite easily with well, not the transition device, but the thruster. And this ship has a duration increase for the thruster, so you can have the duration just like going for ages on it. You're getting an 82% dodge rate. 82% of all shots aren't going to hit it. It's quite crazy to think about. And then it's got tail reinforcements, so it's harder to break the engines, which is fantastic for this. Again, I'd love to see a mode where I could use this and have loads of fun with it, and unfortunately it's not there at the moment. Same again for the destroyer. It has head damage reduced by 54%, when movement speed is greater than 40, critical strike rate increased by 45%, and attack battleship stern and flanks for 36% additional damage. Subsystem wise, it has thruster duration, which is nice, and kinetic energy damage. So this is like a little Gorse boat. You could probably pick one of these up as you're working up towards your tornado or something like that. And it would probably be a nice little leveling ship. You could get, what, 43 Gorse onto here, which is perfect for the destroyer because it'll shoot 2 of the Gorse at a time. And you're getting kinetic energy damage as the base out in the subsystem, so if you can roll that with crit and crit damage, on top of the movement speed is greater than 40, critical strike rate increased by 45%, you could hit 100% crit rate on this with Gorse, and it will dish out a lot of damage for what it is. Plus, with the movement speed and the thruster duration, this will let you just like go around in circles and dodge a lot of shots quite easily. So yeah, again, destroyer though, oh well. Would be nice to see some of this kind of ship design on some of the other ships that are a little bit lackluster in the game. Next up, we have the Fel Hunter. So here we have the Warship features. We have fleet warship capacity increased by 16%. This is great for mining. Then we have laser weapon range increased by 200 yards, which is pretty decent. And again, with all pirate ships, the attack battleship stern and flanks for 36 additional damage. 36% additional damage. Subsystem wise, we have main gun times of use and thermal damage on lasers. So I like the Fel Hunter. It's a great looking ship, but it is B tier. It's not as good as Tornado. It's not as versatile as a Tornado. The Tornado can dish out more damage than a Fel Hunter, as far as I've seen so far anyway. So the Tornado just tops it on every aspect at the moment. Pretty much same as the Tornado. This is more of a DPS running ship. It has got the tactical device for main guns specifically. So you might want Dr. Salo or the new hero, new captain, sorry, Karen on here to give you that increased chance of getting your shots back, so you can fire the laser off more frequently if it can stay alive. Normally this thing's dead after the first laser shot because people have gone, oh god, that thing's got a massive laser on it, let's shoot at it, and now it's super squidgy. It'd be great if it could outrange, but laser range isn't particularly great. And it's fairly easy to catch up to, although it's fairly quick, so you can get away with it, but most of the time I've seen this thing die pretty quickly. So yeah, that's about it for the Fel Hunter, really. Great for mining. It's not a bad replacement if your Tornado's dead in Legion battles, but I would still recommend running a Tornado over it. Battleship. For the pirates, we have the Monster. So, again, it's got assault on warship features, which is attack battleship stern and flanks for 36% additional damage. We have projectile weapons penetrate target with 44% probability. And we have reinforced flanks, which gives you flank armor durability increased by 42%. On top of that, we have the crit rate, plus 7.5% for projectiles, and kinetic energy damage on projectiles. This ship's an absolute beast. You put, I think I've seen 7 or 8 Gorse on this, if you don't want to run tacticals on it, or run smaller tech tacticals. And it absolutely causes an amount of damage that I think it's the top damage ship in the game at the moment. With that said, it is S tier. My recommendations for the ship are Surf for the heal on kill, which can keep the ship alive, keep its DPS going, keep just destroying your enemies with it. I recommend Gorse on this as well, because the base high crit rate. Other than that, Blackbeard Layla, very good on this ship. And again, I'd also recommend Vincent. Vincent's pretty nuts on this thing. It's got pretty good base dodge rate. Reform can increase its dodge rate further, and with Vincent on it, you get an increased dodge rate, crit chance, and crit damage. And that's what this ship's about. It's about trying to get that crit up and just critting the hell out of anything that's in front of it. Great damaging ship. It's S tier. Not more to be said. Now we have the Red Dragon for the pirate carrier. Yet again, it's got assault, attack battleship stern and flanks with 36% additional damage. Perfectionism, when durability is above 64%, damage increased by 32%. And the first 28 damage received are invalid. These are great warship features. You got a bit of tank, you've got loads of damage. So yeah, I can definitely recommend this ship. Subsystem wise, you got UAV crit, kinetic damage, and the last subsystem, unfortunately, is a missile subsystem. Missiles just aren't worth it. They are worth it on specific ships. We'll get round to that when we get into the primal ships, because they've got some subsystems that make the pulse missile quite powerful. The Red Dragon is, I think, an A-class carrier. It's got more damage potential than the Frost. It loses the support potential because you want to try and run this for damage, so you won't be running these massive tier 7 global CN things on it. So I think you want to try and get as much damage out of it as possible, and use the fact that it's got, when durability is above 64%, damage increases by 32%. That's quite a lot of damage increase, and the subsystems, and attack battleship stern flaps 36% additional damage. There's a lot of stacking buffs there. You obviously want to be using the Falcons on here. UAVs, they give you the most damage for this because of the subsystems are specifically towards precision kinetic damage, and they're the kinetic UAVs, or at least one of the subsystems. You can play around and have shadows and lunar eclipses onto the other subsystem. That will also be pretty viable. Commander wise, I'd recommend Surf. Same as with most carriers, it's usually your last ship alive in arena. And she'll keep it alive for certain, keeping that durability above 64%, which is really nice. So you're getting that increased damage constantly. Whenever it kills, it's going to heal up loads. And if it is a last ship alive, she's going to give you the damage buff, and that's even more stacking damage. So yep, I'm going to go A tier with the Red Dragon. Next up, we are going into the Empire ships. So we have the frigate, we have the sustainer, then A again because it's not useful for arena. It has high speed assault when movement is greater than 40. Critical strike rate is increased by 45%, so it's the same as the pirate one. And then the first 28 damage received are invalid, so it can keep alive fairly easily. And then, in my opinion, probably the worst warship features of a group, I guess. All the empires have this one. It has 60% chance of immune abnormal state. This means if someone sets it on fire, because God help them using thermal missiles, it has a chance to just remove the fire effects, which does like no damage anyway. Other than that, we have propulsion augmentation system, duration plus 2 seconds. Again, killer Robbie on here. All of the frigates are pretty much exactly the same. Yeah, there's not much to be said about this. It's in NA because it's just not going to help you out all that much once you get past a certain point. I mean, I dropped frigates even earlier than that. You can run 2 cruiser, 2 destroyer at some points, or 2 cruiser and then you might have the 1 frigate, or the frigate's just inconsequential. Destroyers, same thing again. So we'll have a quick look at it though. Additional salvage increased chance by 52%. Damage to UAVs, missiles, torpedoes, absolutely worthless. And the abnormal state again. Subsystems, you get laser weapon damage. And you have an anti-aircraft subsystem. This just, even if they did the mode where I was saying you could have, it forces you to take a frigate, a destroyer, a cruiser, and a battleship, and that's your fleet. Even if you got forced into doing that, you wouldn't even use this. It's that bad. Yeah. Moving on. We have the Centurion Cruiser. So on here we have ally buff duration increased by 70%. Head damage reduced by 54%, which means on frontal it has reduced damage, which is quite nice actually. 6% chance of immune abnormal state. Again, personally I think that's worthless. And then we have a torpedo buff and a missile buff on subsystems. Now with torps, it's okay at best. But the problem is you have to run it in that frontal subsystem, and it is a cruiser, so it can potentially fire 3 weapons off, not 2. If you have it on frontal, it only fires the 2 weapons off. But as soon as you rotate it, you're losing the damage reduction, and it's kind of counterproductive. You're either slightly tankier or less DPS, where most of the other cruisers can out DPS or even out tank just because they're more maneuverable, and this thing's sat still in front of everything shooting it. in that respect, Captain Baron might be quite good on here because he has the ability to increase your damage when it gets hit, and if it's stationary, it's going to get hit a lot. It'll also increase its survivability slightly. What I recommend on here, I would probably run high explosive torps on here if you have them, because I know a lot of people won't have some of the other torps that I've only ever seen drop once. I've only got one of them anyway, so I'd ignore that for now. But I think this is the worst cruiser. You know what? I'm actually going to demote. I think it's going to be D tier. Yeah, I think it's going to be D tier. There are just better cruisers all around for it. Next up, we have the Legion. On the Legion warship features, we got weapon range increased by 160 yards. We have the station pile double battery. When the speed of the warship is 0, the calibration rate and critical strike rate increase by 45%, and it can activate the dual battery. We'll get into the dual battery in a second when I go through the ship a little bit more. Gold coating, chance of immune abnormal state, again, not particularly useful. We have a missile boost on here, and we have a laser boost on the subsystem. Right, so let's quickly sort of talk about the double battery. The double battery affects a single tactical device in the game currently. It affects the dual DMG laser. It's the strongest laser currently in the game, and it absolutely melts things. If you can get crit on here, which has got natural crit because it's staying still when it's firing the laser, and you should be staying still with the Legion anyway, it dishes out a hell of a lot of damage. Other than that, it's quite nicely slotted. You can quite easily get 3 decon rays on here, which is a hell of a lot of damage, and then you fill out with some XNTs and that sort of stuff. Maybe some tacticals for defense. It has very good durability as a base. This is my other S-tier battleship, in my opinion. For this, I highly recommend Jim, because with Jim, you constantly have a chance that these decon rays, which have a 15-second cooldown, so a very long cooldown, just ignores that, shoots them off, loads of damage. Again, he's stationary, you're getting all that crit rate on those decons. If you have support cruisers, you can hit 100% crit rate. And those decon rays are doing 150% damage at that point, which is huge considering how much damage they can actually dish out and deal. The other weapon, XNTs, great little weapon. Completely underrated in my opinion. I think they're the second best laser weapon after the decon rays. They are EM damage. I don't run missiles on it. I wouldn't run missiles on it, like I've discussed earlier. The way missiles work, they're just not good enough to be viable at the current moment. They don't deal enough damage. Even with this subsystem, which is crit damage, they're just not quite there. Next up, we have the King Carrier. I don't actually own this one. I've not seen many of them in Arena at all either. They're quite difficult to get hold of. Here we have self-circulation technology. When the energy is next level, then 50%. I believe what they mean by that, when the energy is below 50%, the energy recovery speed increased by 130%. We then have damage increased by 32% when there is no enemy unit within 400 yards. And we have 60% chance of normal state. On top of that, we have subsystems for missiles, which is cause an abnormal state probability, and then crit rate on UAVs and UAV thermal damage. I'm not sure what to think about this really. The slots aren't too bad. You could easily get a good amount of UAVs on here. The focus damage increased by 32% when there is no enemy unit within 400 yards. Very easy to get if you're using UAVs because they'll fly off and attack things from miles away. Self-circulation technology, the energy recovery rate. I don't see being too much of an issue unless you're using one of the larger lasers on here. Then you might do if people have got the energy nukes or EMPs even maybe. I think this is a B tier. I think it's about the same level as a Frost in terms of potential. It hasn't got the buff the Frost has, the duration of your buffs, your command CNs or whatever you're running on it. But it potentially has more damage than the Frost. If it's anything like the Legion durability-wise, it will be one hell of a thing to try and take down, though. It's going to have a lot of HP. So there is that going for it as well. It's potentially very tanky. Again, because it's a carrier, and the way most people attack in Arena, I'd recommend Surf on here. Right, we're now going into the primals. These are some fun-looking ships.
Shipbuilding.
So we have the Frigate Guard. So here we have extreme cooling, tactical device cooldown, and energy consumption reduced by 32%. Must crit every 1.6 seconds, and frequency of use of transition devices increases. Cooldown increases by 40%. It also has subsystem, which is transition engine times of use. Because it can get so much cooldown, this thing can literally jump almost permanently until you run out of times of use, which is quite funny to watch. It literally, I've seen one person in Arena and it just started going boing, boing, boing. I just went, well, I'm never going to be able to catch that thing. Until it ran out of transitions, or I got lock on with a Legion with decon rays on it, but it's quite funny to watch at least. Again, it's a frigate. It's not really going to be part of the meta at the moment, so we'll just stick this in here for now. I can potentially seeing it being used if again there is some sort of mode where frigates become viable and must have sort of thing. So and Killer Robbie on here would be pretty good because of the amount of times you can transition. She can give you that damage boost that she gives whenever you're moving faster and a transition counts. Destroyer. We have the Fanatics. We've got Interferer. The probability of causing an abnormal state increased by 60%. Torpedo durability increased by 180% and speed increase. And the frequency of transition devices and cooldown. Subsystem wise, we have laser weapon abnormal effect plus 15%. And torpedo EM damage plus 10%. This is a bit more of a torpedo boat. You could try and run it with XNTs. I would recommend if you're going to run one of these with the torps, the EM damage torps. They're quite nice. Again, though, it is a destroyer, so it's not too viable currently. Good for leveling maybe, but the chances of you trying to get one of these while you're leveling, you're going to get to a point where you'll be running 2 tornadoes or another different fit, and at that point your tornadoes will transition nicely into monsters, and you're worth more trying to get into those faster than trying to get some of these little ships up that you're just not going to use currently. Cruiser wise, we have the Church. I actually quite like this one, and it's a missile boat, so it's completely against everything I normally say about missiles. But it has, when ship durability drops below 50%, restore 80% shield durability and activate the shield. On top of that, we have missile durability increased by 60%. Not too useful, but it does have missile damage increased by 30%, which is quite nice. The frequency use of transition devices increases and cooldown decreases by 40%, also quite nice. It's got missile crit rate, and it's got EM damage on missiles. If you get pulse missiles, like tier 3 ones, you just slap them all over this thing. It actually dishes out quite a good amount of damage. It's getting 30% from the missile specialization. You can get the EM damage and the missile crit rates up, so that's quite a lot of damage as well. So I'm going to put this in B tier, I think. I don't think it's quite as good as a tornado. It's probably about on par with a Fel Hunter with pulse missiles on it, and the extra shield. You know, you've lost your shield, your ship drops, durability's dropped to 50%. All of a sudden, your shield's back up to 80%, and they have big shields. All the primals have these big shields. So yeah, it's not a bad ship. It's definitely not a bad ship. Because of missile cooldown being very long, I'd recommend Jim on here. That's who I'd try and get. I'd try and put Jim on here, maybe take him off the Legion and put him onto that, which feels so bad because I'm not sure who else you would put on a Legion. Maybe Blackbeard Layla. You'd have to play around with it. But yeah, it's not a bad ship. It's definitely B tier. It can tank quite well for a cruiser, especially for a cruiser. It doesn't have the ability to be quite as functional or as the Tornado. The way the slots are laid out, it's really weird on this ship. It's got a hole in the middle. Why they decided to stick a hole in the middle, I understand it's got a hole in the middle on the ship because it's got some weird energy bulb in the middle. But yeah, if it didn't have that hole in the middle and the slots was a little bit different and you could put the CN, it might be A tier at that point, but yeah, anyway. Okay, next up we have the Arbitration, which is the primal battleship. Here we have self-circulation technology. When the energy is next level, then 50% the energy recovery speed increased by 130%. You really need to get someone to reword this at some point. I'm pretty sure that does still mean energy is below than 50. The energy speed increases by 130%. It has tactical main gun cooldown reduced by 36%. And frequency of use of transition devices. Subsystem-wise, we have laser, weapon EM damage, and main gun cooldown. This cooldown reduction you can get on this ship is nuts for that tactical weapon. Like, honestly, you can have that laser fire off, and then like 6 seconds later, it's firing off again. Dr. Sulu and Karen, the new hero on this, could be very, very, very viable. Getting those tactical chances back. If you only have the one tactical, I think it has to trigger on that tactical as well. So that's potentially something you could play around with, maybe, just to keep that laser just constantly firing and firing and firing. Other than that, it's a great fit for the XNT lasers. It has EM damage on the reforms, which is really, really nice. So you can just slap a load of EM, load of XNTs on here, get a load of EM damage out. And the XNTs are, again, underrated weapons. I think they're actually a lot better than most people give them credit for. And yeah, Dr. Sulu or Karen as captains. I quite like this ship. It looks cool as well. Last but not least, for the primals, we have the Immortal. So the Immortal has emergency recharge. When ship durability drops below 20%, restore 80% shield durability and activate the shield. We then have the probability of causing abnormal state increased by 60%, and the frequency use of transition devices. I've only recently got one of these, so mine's not currently leveled up, but someone I know has one in Arena, and I can't kill it. Literally can't kill it. It's got so much shield, and then it drops to 50%, and then it's got all of its shield back, well, 80% of its shield back. It's horrible. It's honestly horrible to deal with. It's such a tanky carrier. Not only that, but this carrier is more of like a laser boat with some UAV. So this thing usually, the way I would personally fit it would be slapping XNT lasers all over it, getting huge amount of damage out of them. And the slots, you can easily get quite a few XNT lasers on these subsystems. So laser EM damage at the top, you can get 3 XNTs on that. At the bottom, weapon abnormal effect plus 10%. There's another 3 XNT lasers you can get on there. You can add a 7th XNT laser very easily, and that still gives you enough room to either run 3 UAVs, or you'd probably want to try and actually probably drop the UAVs maybe entirely. They're not particularly worth it at that point with only 3 of them on here. And run it with shield reps and stuff like that, just to make the shield even more horrible to deal with. You could also run Transition devices. I have seen them with transition devices. It's got to get out of the way of lasers. Again, it's not bad. And there is another fit for this where you run all shadows on it with a Lunar Eclipse because it has got an EM damage reform. Again, it's got great tank, great damage. I think this is actually an S-TAS. I do believe it's better than the Red Dragon because of its tank and everything else. So we're up to the final hurdle. We have Enmyth
Shipbuilding.
ship classes. So first up, we have the Unicorn. Not sure why it's called a Unicorn. And it's got heavy battery. Range improved by 240, calibration rate plus 36%, and bullet speed plus 40%. Frontal damage reduced by 34%, and battleship has only frontal muzzles, which is confront the enemy head-on. And thermal circulation systems. 40% of thermal damage converted to shield value. Now that 40% thermal damage converted to shield value, it's quite nice, but it only affects it when your shields are down, so when you're taking thermal damage to the hull, that's what will recharge the shields. So it makes it fairly tanky, especially if you come up against legions with Decon Rays. They're doing a lot of thermal damage to you, so all of a sudden your shield's jumping up and down as you're taking hits, which is quite nice. It's got all weapons crit rate on a subsystem, and laser weapon EM damage. Again, this is another one where I feel like XNTs are quite nice onto it. You're frontal facing, which isn't good because now you're stationary, but does give you the availability to put a laser main gun on here, because if you're going to sit still facing the target anyway, because you need to get the buffs from heavy battery and confront the enemy head on. So yeah, it's not bad. I've played around it with a bit myself. I don't think it's as good as a Tornado, so I'm going to put it in B class. With XNT lasers and everything on it, Jim's a good fit, but you could probably run Surf, or you could run maybe Blackbird Layla on here, and it'll work alright. It'll get some kills, it'll keep itself healed. And again, because of the way the thermal damage works, you're taking thermal to the hull, or you're sending your shields back up. It's not bad. Not bad at all. And then last ship, we have the Fenrir. Now, I've been testing this ship personally, because I picked it up, I've leveled it up now. It has probability of causing abnormal state increased by 60%. When releasing UAVs, there's a 30% probability to release additional UAV. This is per UAV, so each UAV has a 30% chance of having an additional UAV. So that can ramp up pretty quick. And then we have 40% of thermal damage converted to shield value. Other than that, we have tactical device cooldown, 7%. UAV causes an exception probability, 20%. I believe this is the same effect as abnormal. I haven't seen anything different to really change my mind on that. I have a Lunar Eclipse. I've had the Lunar Eclipse on here, and when I've had Lunar Eclipses on Red Dragons, you can sometimes see the any EM resistance on target reduction. You can sometimes see that drop and then come back up. With this, I don't see it drop at all. So I believe that's how this works, and I believe this would also affect flames and their fire damage over time ability. On the front, we have UAV thermal damage. Now, I've managed to roll this front subsystem to have EM damage as well. It's got EM damage on the reforms. I've run this with a full fleet of shadows, and it's devastating. It deals so much damage, it's ridiculous. It hasn't got much in the way of tank in comparison to, say, the Immortal, but it can dish out a lot more damage than the Immortal with the UAVs. So, 8 UAVs out. If you only have 2 extra UAVs from all 8 flying outright, that's a 37.5% damage increase. With 30%, you're looking between 2 and 4. So you're looking over a 50% damage increase as an average, which is massive. With EM resistances being dropped by the Lunar Eclipse, on top of the fact that you would have Shadows, which are doing EM damage only, and the EM reform, it just is a lot of damage. This is currently my favourite carrier. I plan on dropping my Legion, running this and an Immortal and a Monster, and then my Tornado is my look at the moment. This is an S-Class. It's at least as viable as the Immortal, in my opinion. Again, it's a carrier. I recommend Surf. Chance of it getting killed early on because it has more durability than the battleship, and people are a lot more scared of monsters than they are of every other ship. Plus, if they do target your carrier, your monster's probably going to kill them anyway. So yeah, highly recommend these top 4 ships. We have the Monster, the Legion, the Immortal, and the Fenrir. Hope you guys have enjoyed. I hope this is informative. If you got any varying opinions, again, I haven't tried some of these ships out. So drop a comment below, let me know what you think, and if you got any ideas for testing, you can drop into my Discord channel. We can have a chat, we can do some tests if you have the ships. And yeah, other than that, guys, links will be in the description below for Discord and to this tier maker list, so you can come and have a look at it. And that's it from me. Have a good one, guys, and catch you guys next time.